So, some frightening words. Nick Bontis is an associate professor at the DeGroote School of Business. He's also an expert in business strategy and management and joins us now from Hamilton. Mr. Bontis, thanks for joining us. We do appreciate it.
Happy Friday.
Well, not a so happy Friday. I mean, when you look at the job loss numbers, the highest number of job losses were in Ontario, as we mentioned. Most of the 81,000 jobs lost in the province were in manufacturing. We've been hearing Ontario's premiers say that Ontario needs to reinvent its economic base to go from manufacturing to something like green energy, specifically what he's recently called smart electricity or a smart electricity grid. Does this make sense? Is this the right way for Ontario to proceed, given, it's a changing economy, clearly?
Well, this is disheartening news, obviously. Just to put the numbers in perspective, 129,000, it's a huge number in Canada. It's almost the population of Oakville, Ontario. Imagine a whole city getting wiped out without jobs. But a couple things we've got to remember. If you take a 50-year history of the unemployment rate in Canada, it hovers around 8%, and we're not even at that rate yet. So I think we're just still cleansing the system. And in terms of the transition from the manufacturing sector to what's called typically the knowledge era sector, what we mean is the use of our brain as opposed to our hands in terms of labor. So that's what intellectual capital is all about. So I think what the government wants to do is it wants us to concentrate more on the expertise, the experience, and the education of our workforce as opposed to the brute strength or the labor of our workforce. You recall 4 out of the 5 jobs that were lost come from either manufacturing or construction, and both of those are very labor intensive. So we need to migrate over to more the service types jobs which utilize our brains more.
Right, and you mentioned that because that's something that the Ontario Premier has pointed to, something that Ontario needs to reinvest in. I think, also part of that, again, I want to ask specifically about this sort of new kind of green hydro, I shouldn't call it hydro, but a new green power kind of grid. How significant is that? Is this something that could take Ontario in the kind of direction that it needs, do you think?
I think it could, because what it does is it brings 2 major political issues together. One, the economy, and of course, one, energy. We know even from the Obama political campaign that those 2 were critical issues down in the U.S. So I think what the Ontario government is trying to do is bridge those 2 together and say, okay, here's an opportunity for us. We can be the North American leader with regards to the greening of energy, and at the same time, we can be the North American leader in terms of the intellectual capital and the wisdom and experience and expertise of our labor force. Pulling those 2 issues together might allow us to jumpstart the economy and get us out of this funk.
Right, and we know that hydro right now is a huge Canadian export to the U.S., but shouldn't Ontario have been planning, if it was going to do this, for this years ago, before the crisis hits, and then they sort of look to reinvent? Or to be fair, has Ontario already been involved in that kind of transition? There are more and more wind turbines, many in the works, as we know, but countries like Denmark are leading this right now. Yeah.
Well, hindsight's always 20/20, right? We wish we could have done something, and then we realize we're in trouble. Now we need to do it. I think we are in a good position, and we do have alternative energies. You were talking about wind turbines. We also have nuclear energy in Ontario. So we do have the technology. More importantly, we do have the expertise in Ontario, and that's what I really want to focus on. The fact that Ontario has the intellectual capital, the people that can make this technology work. And I think that's what's going to lead us to be leading in terms of North America as we move forward.
So, I mean, we're talking about green energy, intellectual capital, as you've mentioned. What about green cars? We know the auto sector is never going to be what it has been in the past. Could Ontario be a leader in green car technology?
So the issue here is first to the mark, which means who's going to get there first. First mover advantage. We have some foreign plants in Ontario as well with Toyota and Honda. Are they going to infiltrate the green car space before General Motors, Chrysler, or Ford can? That's the real big question. I think we know that the big 3 are getting hit big time now. What they've got to do is retool their whole infrastructure, which is easier said than done, obviously. But we know that this is the trend of the future, so there's really no going back to the traditional gas guzzlers. We have no choice but to invest heavily in green cars so that we can move forward and at least catch up to the Japanese that are in our marketplace already.
It's going to be a tough road, though, for Ontario, right? I mean, because many people are saying it is now a have-not province. Things have changed in Canada, and you need the money to make those reinvestments. So it's going to be interesting to watch. We certainly appreciate you joining us, strategy and management expert Nick Bontis. Appreciate it.